Hello, welcome back to part 2 of SolidWorks Basics. Today we're going to be exploring some more part features by creating a donut model. So to start, same as last time, we're going to go over to File, hit New, and then select Part. However, another way you can create a new document is by going over and hitting New over here next to the little house icon, and then selecting Part. Okay, so once again, we should immediately show the planes. This is going to be extremely helpful whenever you're making any sort of part. So if you click on front plane, hold shift, click on right plane, and then select show, then we can show our planes. So today we're going to be making a donut. The feature we're going to be using for this is the revolved boss/base up here. It's right next to the extruded boss base that we used last time for a cube. However, the way that this works is that it selects a 2D shape and it rotates it around an axis. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a circle over here and then try to rotate it around here to make a donut. So first thing we need to do is make our sketch. I'm going to go ahead and select the front plane and hit sketch. You can also go ahead and click the sketch button in the top left, but a menu opens up once you click on a plane that lets you sketch on the plane. So now that we have our sketch open, we need to draw a circle so that we can rotate it. I'm going to go ahead and select the circle tool from our sketch tools and then draw it offset from the center because we want to rotate it around the center and then draw it out. I'm going to keep it on the middle plane so it doesn't shift upwards or downwards and stay symmetrical. So I'm going to go ahead and hit escape to exit the editing of the circle. And now if I hold the point in the center, you'll notice I can move it around. This isn't something we want. We want this square to be rigid. Right now it's made up entirely of blue lines. We want these to be black, just like how we edited our square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use the Smart Dimension tool like we did last time to define the size of our circle. So if I click on the outer edge, I can choose the diameter of my circle. I'm going to go ahead and click and choose 50 millimeters as my diameter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to distance it from the center because as you notice it can move any which way. I'm going to choose the Smart Dimension tool once again, click on the center, and then click on this plane in the middle. I'll go ahead and make it 50. Okay, now you'll notice that the blue line that was once the circle, it's no longer blue, now it's black. That shows that it's defined. So we could exit our sketch here. However, the way that the feature that we're going to use, the revolve boss/base, works is that you have to define a line for it to revolve around. So right now, if you look at it, you'd think that, hey, why can't I revolve it around this center plane? But if I use the scroll wheel and pivot around, pressing down on that middle button, you'll notice that it's not actually a line that SolidWorks can detect. It's merely the intersection of these two planes, the front plane and the right plane. So we actually have to create a line in the center so that SolidWorks can actually recognize that as a line that it can pivot around and create our donut. So I'm going to go ahead and hit spacebar and realign our view. And now we need to draw a line in the center. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this line tool. If you hit on the drop down arrow next to the line, you'll notice an option that says center line. So it's just like the line tool. If you use the center line, it creates a dotted line. So I'll just draw around over here. SolidWorks doesn't recognize this line as an actual line. This is what we call reference geometry. So this is a line, but SolidWorks won't extrude it. This right over here is a solid line. So SolidWorks will, if you use the extrude feature, it will actually use this and shade in the center. But with reference geometry, SolidWorks doesn't acknowledge that this is an actual line, if you see what I mean. So we're going to use this kind of line as our center axis instead of using a line that, like this black line, a solid line, because that would interfere with our circle and SolidWorks would be confused as to what it's trying to extrude. So now we have to go ahead and make sure that this line is actually in the right place that we want it to be. And right now it's not. I'm going to go ahead and delete it using the delete key, and I'm going to draw the center line once again. I'm going to start over here, click, so it's bonded to this, so it's snapping to this center plane, and I'm going to let go over here. You'll notice that it's a little bit difficult to see this line, but you can see the endpoints of it, and if you click in the center, it'll select this line first before selecting the plane. So now what we need to do is we need to make sure that it doesn't move around, because right now it's undefined. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to grab my smart dimension and smart dimension this. Let's make it, the length really doesn't matter here because this is reference geometry. It's not something we're actually going to extrude into a 3D object. And I'm going to make it 10 millimeters. Now I want it to stop moving up and down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and connect the center of this line with the origin over here. So if I right click on this line, there will be an option, the first option there, it will say select midpoint. And now you can see that this option right over here, this point right over here, the center of this line is now selected. If I hold shift and click on the origin and let go of shift, now I can go ahead and select them to be coincident. On the left, underneath relations, I can choose coincident. This makes both of those points in the same place, and now our line is fully defined. If I go ahead and hide this real quick, I'll go ahead and hide the plane. That's the wrong plane. You'll notice that it's completely black. It's not able to be moved. So let me go ahead and show that plane again. And now we're going to go ahead and use the revolved boss base feature. Okay, you notice that all of this over here is black, right? Over here in the corner, it'll say fully defined. This means that everything that can be defined is defined. So if I go ahead and click this and delete it, now this is back to blue. Down in the corner, it'll say underdefined again. This gives you a good knowledge as to whether you're defining everything that you make. And you always want to define stuff so you can't accidentally move your sketches at a later date. So I'm going to go ahead and define this distance once more. And you'll notice that it turns back to black and it says fully defined in the corner once more. Now I can finally go ahead and exit my sketch. The sketch will now show up over here in our feature tree. And now I can choose the feature I want to use, which is the revolved boss base, and then make our donut. You'll notice that it immediately gives you an idea of what you're making. It gives you that shaded area. And on the left, we can go ahead and choose what we want to actually do. SolidWorks immediately noticed that we made this line over here, this axis of rotation, and chose it as the axis of revolution. It usually does that immediately. Unless you have multiple reference geometry lines, it won't recognize which line you want to use. But usually, if you only have one line and one circle that's actually defined, then SolidWorks is pretty smart and it detects what you want to do. Over here, it'll say it chooses the direction. So right now it's blind, which means that it's going based on how many degrees you specify down over here. There are a lot of different options as well, up to vertex, up to surface, offset from surface, and midplane. Midplane is just like the one that we used for the cube. It makes it symmetrical, which you probably won't be able to notice unless I change this to, let's say, 90 degrees. And as you can see that it's symmetrical around. It really doesn't matter what you use because up to vertex and up to surface and offset from surface rely on having previous objects in your part. So we're going to go ahead and use blind and just let it be 360 degrees as a full rotation. So if we go ahead and hit the check mark, boom, we have our donut done. Okay, that's not all that we want to do today, however. There's another feature that it is pretty important to know about over here and underneath the command manager, and those are the cuts. So there's extruded cut and revolve cut. They both behave much in the same way as the extruded boss base and the revolved boss base, except instead of additive, like adding stuff to your part, they're subtractive. So these will remove stuff from the part. We're going to go ahead and make an extruded cut on our donut now, just so you can see how this works. So I'm going to go ahead and draw out a cut on the top plane. I'm going to hit sketch on the top plane. There's a menu that pops up once you select the plane, but if you wanted to, you could also go over to sketch and choose the sketch button. Now let's go ahead and give us a top view of it by hitting spacebar. And then we're going to go ahead and choose where we want our hole to be. So say I want to punch a hole through, I guess, over here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the circle tool, draw out a circle over here, and hit escape. Now I want to define it. I'm going to go ahead and make this, say, 10 millimeters. It really doesn't matter. What I'm trying to prove to you is how the feature itself works. And then I'm going to go ahead and dimension it from over here. Once again, it really doesn't matter too much. I'm just keeping it out here so you can see how this feature works. Now that it's all fully defined, you can see it says fully defined in the corner. I'm going to go ahead and exit the sketch, and you can see the sketch is now on the feature tree. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to features and click on extruded cut. Now I'm going to select our sketch, and then it's going to go ahead and give me a preview of what it wants to cut out. Now we're going to be using one of those other options instead of blind or midplane. We're going to go ahead and use the up to surface option. Now what I can do is I can choose a surface until which it's going to cut to. So if I choose this surface over here, it's going to go up until it reaches the outside surface of the donut. Now what I can do is I can go ahead and hit the check mark, and you'll notice that a hole immediately formed from the place that we kept our plane and out to the surface that we specified it should cut until. That's a good way of not actually using measurements, and instead depending on other parts that depending on where to cut to. If we wanted to make it cut through both sides, then we could have used the midplane option, and just like for the cube, it will make the cut symmetrical on the top and the bottom. But as you can see, that's how the extruded cut would work. The revolve cut would work the exact same way, except instead of cutting in a straight line, it's gonna cut in a circular pattern based on where your axis of revolution is, just like how we made for our original circle. Alright, so that's going to be all for today. We can go ahead and save our donut by hitting Control S or the save button up top here. I'm sorry about last time because it didn't actually show you my file explorer, but essentially you just choose a folder, a predetermined folder somewhere on your computer, and then you hit save after naming it. So I'm going to go ahead and name this donut and place it in my folder that I specified beforehand. Let me go ahead and find it. And then I can save it. You'll notice in the top right, it's going to change from part 2 to donut now, because it knows that now that I've saved it, it can actually give it a part name up top. Alright, thank you. This is gonna be the end of basics, and for our next few CAD lessons, we're gonna go into a little more advanced stuff with assemblies and stuff. Thank you.